All right, so we just looked at the end in mind. We know what we're about to make, and we downloaded the template for it. And unfortunately, this is about to be the most boring part of this whole section, and I apologize in advance. So we're going to try and blitz through it as fast as we can. And also, even though we downloaded this template, I really want to show you how to create this from scratch, because here's the deal. We want to learn how to do this and create custom projects here. So by learning how to set up the projects ourselves and set up these files like these templates, you'll be able to deviate from these and create anything you can imagine at any size. So let's look at these templates real quick and just kind of see what we've got going on, and then we'll create our own template for our own needs. So right now this brochure is actually, the document's looking at portrait mode right here, or vertical. So I see my front cover, I see my back cover, and then I see my inside panel. So it is one document here, and it's just got guides to show me where things fall. So if we wanted to dive in with the brochure just building right over the top of this document, how I would work is I'd come up here to image rotation, and I'll rotate this clockwise real quick, just because we're going to build a standard, tall, skinny brochure here. So I've got my layers here. This guide is just on this background layer. What I would probably do is hit Command J to jump it to its own layer. I'll fill the background with black by hitting, or with white, I guess, by hitting Command Delete. It's my shortcut to fill with that background color. And now if I turn off that layer we just jump cut, we got a blank white canvas. The other thing I'd start doing is building in my guides. So with my ruler turned on, if you don't see that, go to View and then Rulers, or Command R. I would drop in just some guides, and the reason why is because I don't always want to see all of the extra all the extra text and stuff here. So I drop in some guides that kind of show me where my crops are going to be, and my trim marks and my folds and stuff like that. So then what I could do, and I won't do all of this because this is not how we're going to work, but I just want to show you if I was building on this template, how I would go about it. I'll turn off this guide layer. Let's just rename this, call it guide, so we remember what it is. I'll turn that off, and now we can see that I have the regular guides from Photoshop in there. They're a lot more subtle, and it makes it so I can really focus on the design. Now that I know where my cover size is, and I've got the front, back, and the inside flap, I could start designing, and there's a lot of ways I could go about it. Maybe it's just dragging in one of these photos and scaling it up a little bit, maybe putting a title in here, or paddleboard rentals. And you can get the idea real quick how you can start to build a custom brochure going about it this method here. When it's all said and done, we could simply export this and send it to press, which again, this is great if the printer you're going to work with has a template for you. But what if they don't? Well, you could build over this template here, and in fact I recently just did that, and then my client went to a different printer who had different settings, and we had to recreate the whole thing from scratch anyway. So that being said, let me show you now how I would create this whole thing from scratch. So feel free to watch as much as you can bear. I really hope you learn this and can see the value in knowing how to do this from scratch. If you're just too bored, feel free to move on to the next lesson and you can start with the template file. But here we go. I'm going to go ahead and hit Command N to open up a new document. And since this is going to be a 9 by 12, it's actually going to be 9 inches tall by 12 inches wide. So we'll put 12 inches wide by 9 inches tall. 300 DPI and at CMYK color mode for print. I'll go ahead and usually I would hit OK. We'll go ahead and hit OK. Now here's one thing we did not account for now. This is the exact size of the trim. So if we come back over to this document and I turn on my guides here, we just made a document that's only as big as this blue line, but we did not account for what we call the bleed. This is extra space that we need in order for the printer to be able to have room to grip the file and then be able to trim it back, so that way it's a clean cut with color all the way through the end. We call it a bleed. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to make a couple guides real quick. I'll drop in my rulers right on the edge actually, because what we're about to do is make this document bigger. And that way these guides will be right where my trim mark is. And in fact, I'm just going to jump cut this layer to this background to another layer by hitting Command J. I'll double click and I'll call this trim. That way I know what my trim size is. Now what I'm going to do is change my canvas size. So if I just hit Command, Alt, and the letter C, let's show you where that is in our menu. If we come up here to Image, canvas size, we can quickly change our canvas size. And what I'm going to do, instead of making it the 12 by 9 inches, I'm going to relatively add a 1/4 inch. So that's 0.25 inches to the width and 0.25 inches to the height. And if we divide that in half, that actually gives us 1/8 of an inch extra on all sides. So I'll go ahead and hit OK. And now we can see we have this extra 1/8 of an inch all the way around. Okay. So now what I can do is make another layer in here, and I'll just fill this one with black. Alt delete fills with my foreground color. Okay, so now I can see I've got my trim in front and I've got my background layer behind it. So now what we can do is start building in these panels, and the best way to do that is to divide it in 3. Now there's one thing we do need to be careful of, so I'm going to go ahead and start by just dragging out a shape here with my shape tool down here using the rectangle tool, or the letter U. And it's currently behind my white trim layer, so I'll just bring this to the front. And what I can do now is hit Command T to free transform this. We'll set the width to 4 inches because we're going to do 3 panels, so 12 divided by 3 is 4. So I did 4 inches wide, and currently when we do this, it wants to default to a percentage. So by entering 4 and then IN for inches, it'll make my shape 4 inches instead of 4%. My height I'll put at 9 inches, so 9 IN, and then I'll hit the Enter key on my 10 keypad. And now what I can do, we'll go ahead and apply this transformation, and I've got one of the panels ready to go. So I'll drag this over to where my trim mark is. Make sure it snaps to that, and if it doesn't snap, make sure under View you have Snap turned on. Now what we're going to do is drag down another guide. So I'll drag it down, and then I'll hit the Alt key to make it vertical. And now I'm going to hold down Alt to drag a copy of this rectangle. So we're going to name this first. We'll call it left panel. Alt drag a copy, and now that snaps into place, and this is our back panel. And actually, technically, this isn't the left panel. It's left on the screen, but it's the actual inside panel of our brochure. And then I'm going to drag down another guide. I'm going to Alt click and drag to create another copy, and this will be the front cover. Okay, so now we've essentially done the same thing as what we already had here. They do have a few more guides that they've set up. They've set up a little bit of space between those folds and everything. But we essentially have the exact same document going on, but you created this custom, and that way, let's say you wanted to make a very specific size. You can do anything you want. So one other thing we need to be aware of, if this is truly our front cover, and this is our back cover, and it folds right down the middle, this inside panel, if this folds, it's kind of hard to visualize, but if this were to fold towards this spine, if these are the exact same sizes, they're going to kind of run into each other on this fold. So we would need to trim just a touch back, and that's why we need to talk to the printers when we go to make a file like this to make sure that we know where their folds are going to be, because there's nothing worse than having a specific color on each panel. Let's just show you here. And then if you were to miss those folds, let's say our guides, let's say this is, this hard black line, but let's say the fold really happens, I don't know, like here, it wouldn't look good. So that's where we really want to be careful. And if we do set it up this way, that we've triple checked our measurements and we make sure it works good. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and hit Save, Command S, and I'll call this brochure out. This will be the outside of the brochure. On my desktop here, we've got this folder for all of our design files, and I'll put it in my Photoshop file right there. I'll hit Save, and now we're pretty much ready to go with the outside design. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and stop this video, and in the next lesson we're going to start actually creating the design.